what was the catalyst for you getting involved with like more and more about the conservation side of things?
Yeah, so it's funny. It started with the gill nets. So that was really a fisherman driven, and a lot of spear fishermen in Santa Barbara were involved with that. So I was aware of that. I think, working at the dive store doing something, and we had signs up everywhere. And so that was interesting to see that work. I really got involved. So there was a process in like 1999 or 2000 called the Marine Life Protection Act, MLPA. And it was, we gotta set aside, areas, completely preserved minimal, and what I mean preserved fishing, no areas for no fishing, areas with a little bit of fishing, and areas that allow fishing. And they need to act in a network. Prior to that, there was like a trial run, if you will, at the Channel Islands off of Santa Barbara. So maybe like it might have been 99, 98, 99, maybe 2000. But so I got involved in that because they were, I was diving the islands at that time a lot. And there were large preservationist groups, same ones that are at play now, for a lot of good reasons. And I'm not going to beat up marine protected areas. They are a great tool. They really are. And so it's really important. And that's something I want to hammer over when I really talk about what we're doing with all waters and everything. We gotta be good stewards, and there is lots of weird stuff going on with the ocean and everything else, and so we got to be good stewards. So I want to be real clear on that. But there was like every area was put on a map and said we're going to close it, and you guys have to come to consensus with you guys spear fishermen have to come to consensus with commercial fishermen and with people from the Audubon Society and from people from all these different walks that want completely different things. Come to consensus and build maps that you feel okay with. And it was a long and hard process. And so me and a guy named Matt Lum, who's a really good, famous white sea bass diver, were the consumptive diver working group rep for the Santa Barbara area. When that then became the Marine Life Protection Act, and we're still dealing with that when we get into today's battle, I'll talk about that. I was tasked with some of the coastal stuff in Santa Barbara, and really where I think learned how to swim, definitely learned how to catch stuff in the tide pools, is now one of the largest marine reserves in our network, no-take marine reserve, and it's built around UC Santa Barbara. And at the time, I was very opposed to that. And the reason I was very opposed to that, I've shared this in other podcasts, and I'll share it again in my passion for what I'm doing now. I did not grow up with a lot of money. Grew up in a beautiful place. I have wonderful parents, visited my dad today, a wonderful guy, but my folks were divorced, and we lived with my mom. And my mom did arts and crafts at the beach show in Santa Barbara to support us, so didn't make a lot of money. I lived with my two sisters. I have a younger sister and an older sister. We were on government assistance for a lot of my lives, meaning food stamps. We got the wonderful government cheese and bread. We didn't have a car till I was 13 years old. And I grew up with, because of the university community and some other things going on, just geopolitical at the time, grew up surrounded by people from Southeast Asia. So a lot of Laotian people, Hmong people, Vietnamese people, Cambodian people, Filipinos, the friends from Chile, from Bolivia. It was this really cool area. And we all didn't have a lot of money. And the ocean was what we did for recreation. We'd go down to the tide pools when it was low tide. We would go forage in the tide pools. We fished on the piers. We fished off the beach and later spearfished. And the fish that I caught, we didn't eat it every day, but the fish that I caught was something we ate on a weekly basis and something I gave to the neighbors. It gave me a sense of accomplishment as a young man. Like I was providing for the family. In retrospect, I recognize that. But B, it allowed my mom we had money stress, man. And it would be like, okay, so now there's fish on the table, there's halibut or whatever it was. She didn't have to buy chicken or something that day. And maybe there's a couple extra bucks to do whatever with. It was a meaningful part of my life and our economics. And so it occurred to me, and it occurs to me even now, if I was born now, I wouldn't have my life. If I was born now, the whole area where I was, where there's a bunch of under the poverty line people, still are, next to the beach, you can't fish now. I would not have been able to develop the skills that I have now because of the placement of that MPA. And I kind of saw that then. funny, I look at that MPA now and it's a pretty cool MPA. They closed a really nice area. Doesn't affect me now. It's had some spillover with sheephead and lobster and stuff like that. But they did not consider the impacts that it was making on people without voices, right? And so that's what got me involved then, and that's why I got re-involved now. I had almost PTSD from that stuff back then because it was such a acrimonious process. And you had really big money, and it's the same really big money that we have now. Groups like Resource Legacy Fund, NRDC, National Resource Defense Council or Center, the Ocean Conservancy, all well and good. They want to preserve the ocean, but I'm using the word preserve. They have a close it down and let it do its thing, and nobody catches fish anymore. And so that was there, and there's like millions and millions of dollars and millions of dollars going into the universities that are funding the studies to make this happen. And as a young man, when you still are, you believe things are true and they're going to work well, it was crazy to see that stuff and crazy to see some of the negotiations we had to do. So I quickly learned nothing got done in the meetings. We would meet with a professor who's still at UCSB, who ended up really being a strong advocate, if you will, on the scientific side for shutting stuff down. We'd meet with him and try to negotiate with him. We'd meet with people from the Ocean Conservancy. We were able to keep a couple key areas. We were able to keep an area open on the backside of Santa Cruz Island where we shoot white sea bass by saying, hey, we'll let you, or not let you, we will agree that it's a good idea to close down Carrington Point. We'll agree that it's a good idea to close down Winfield Scott on Anacapa, but please keep this one area open near Gull Island. We did the same thing on the coast when the real MLPA process came to keep a couple high spots open. None of that was done in the meetings, the public meetings. What was done in the public meetings is we followed through on what we said we'd do. We stood up and said, we back them doing this or that. And so I was talking about PTSD. It was just like, it felt we had no chance. We lost a lot of great areas. We did a lot of good work. Some of those preserves are wonderful. They're all great. I mean, they're not at this point, the level we have, not hurting anything. But I learned a hard lesson in kind of public process back then. So